And I ran up the stairs and I said, "Oh, let's grab that post." And I chucked it on the side in the kitchen. And as the post moved, I saw something at the top that said, "On His Majesty's service." And at first I thought, "Oh God, what have I done?" I thought,
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sisu Sisters podcast.
I'm Annukka, a LinkedIn coach.
And I'm Dorita, a business English coach.
Our podcast is all about succeeding, with themes like life stories and light bulb moments. Hi, I'm Annukka, with a sore throat.
Oh dear. And I'm Dorita, and together we are Sisu Sisters. Today, our guest, straight from St George's Park, is Kay Cossington MBE. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, nice to have you here. For the people who don't know who you are, can you please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Kay Cossington MBE. My role here at the English Football Association is the technical director for women's England teams. My remit and role looks after all of our women's teams from our under 15s through to our senior Lionesses. I look after all of our talent system and I look after all of our performance system that aids and supports our England players to be the very best they can. So I'm here live at St George's Park. We have a Lionesses camp going on right now. I've just come from the pitch, which is great. And it's fab to be here and good to be back on camp.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about your story? How did you end up at the FA, the world's oldest football association?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. So I was born and grew up in East London. I'm one of five children, the middle. I have two older brothers and a younger brother and sister. And I had a dad that was crazy about football and a mum that knew nothing about football. So she had to put up with a family that was going crazy about that. We were keen, passionate West Ham fans growing up in East London, absolutely. And my dream kind of come true, I guess, when I was 14 and I was first signed for West Ham, which back then, all that time ago, didn't seem like a reality because when I was growing up and I used to play football in the streets, the only role models I could ever see were men. So, believe it or not, as a West Ham fan, Waddle, Hoddle, Gascoigne were my role models. So some say that I should have been a Spurs fan, but that's not the case. But that very quickly changed. I tried to play at school. There wasn't really many girls' teams to play at school. I took a GCSE in PE, and I had to do dance and gymnastics and netball and hockey while the boys did football and rugby. And I was craving being on the pitch they were on and didn't want to be on the pitch that the other girls were on. And that's where the journey started. My journey was a hobby. It was something I loved. It was something that made me really happy. I signed for West Ham at 14. I played in the senior first team at 14. And I stayed there for well over a decade as a player. And then I went into a management role. I was never going to make it as an international player for sure. But at that point, there wasn't any development teams for England. It was only the senior women's team. So I very quickly and accidentally actually fell into coaching. And that was born out of, at the time, our coach for West Ham was doing it as a volunteer. And one day he didn't turn up for training. And we stood around as players and thought, well, what do we do? I was 18 at the time. And someone said, okay, do you want to take the warm up? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I took the warm up, and I'll never forget that day. We were standing in Barking, and I had a group of players around me, all of which were older than me, more experienced than me. And I said, I'll take the warm up. And I remember standing in the middle of that group and absolutely loving what I was doing and what I was saying and how I was trying to help the team. And that was the moment I think I found a bit of coaching in me. Anyway, I carried on playing. And then in later my early 20s, I decided that actually I was really keen on coaching. So I started doing my coaching badges. I started helping at West Ham. We only had two women's teams at West Ham. By the time I left there as the manager, we had four developed youth teams. We had two women's teams who'd got promoted across five leagues. And then don't shout at me for this. I then went across the water and joined Millwall. Yeah, but back then, Millwall Lionesses was one of the most successful women's teams, and as a player, we all wanted to be Millwall because They were the first ever centre of excellence for the women's game. They had international players there. So I was asked to go across there and be the head coach and technical director. And I absolutely loved it. And I always talk about I grew up at Millwall actually because I found exactly who I was. And while I was there, I started coaching for England. So Hope Powell contacted me and said, would I be interested to come and do some scouting for England? So I did. And then I was asked, would I like to do a coaching session at a talent ID day? And I said, yes, I would. And we went to Warwick University, and there's always a story. There's 3 or 4 pitches, and I was told to take a group of players and go on a pitch. I went to the furthest pitch you could possibly find because I didn't want anyone to watch me. And the person at the time that employed me said that even though you was on the furthest pitch away from us, we could hear you and we could see you, and that was the time we knew you were special, was the words that he said to me.
Oh, how brilliant.
And even back then, I had a mentor, a guy called Tommy Yordan, who I'll talk about him a bit later, that I hadn't been in contact with for the best part of 20 years, and I've just got in contact with him again. He told me all those years ago, one day, Kay, you're going to be a technical director. And I never believed him because it wasn't even an option back then. And fast forward, I've become a national team coach for over a decade, working with all of our England teams. I won a gold medal with the under 19s. I won a gold medal with the under 23s. I very quickly moved into a technical director role. We won a gold medal at the European Championships with the Lionesses, and obviously we won a silver at our first ever Women's World Cup. So, and here I am now, sitting here in a St George's Park that when I first came here, it was a field, and it's a beautiful training venue and site now that's dedicated for all 24 England teams, and we're really proud of what we've built. But I'm just a young girl that came from East London that had a dream and a passion to play football, and my passion and dream has turned into reality.
Oh, oh, that just sounds so inspiring. I love that. I absolutely love that. Apart from the Millwall bit, but I can understand that. So for Annika, just so that you know, Millwall and West Ham are not friends,
I thought
really.
so. I thought so too.
You thought so too. So how did you then get the job at the FA? I mean, this might be a little bit out of order, but for me, that is kind of like a stuffy old men's club. That's the perception, I'm afraid, that I had of and how on earth, as a woman, did you then get in to the
Yeah.
FA and get your, and start everything that you've started there?
Yeah, there's been some significant moments, and I think I've worked for the FA now for nearly 20 years. And when I think about when I first started coaching for the national teams, we were all doing full-time jobs elsewhere. So I was at Millwall full-time, and then I was coaching with the development teams here. And I guess I got my first opportunity. It wasn't that long ago. And you think that actually this building and this facility has only been here for 12 years. When I think back to, we were based at Wembley, there were 5 of us that were full-time across the whole of the women's game. And now my division alone here that looks after England teams is circa 70 people, 70. It's a massive, massive, and that's without what goes on at the rest of the game: participation, coaching, development, refereeing, etc. It's massive. It's a huge organisation. And I guess I've grown up with the organisation, growing up with women's football. And I think what we've seen in the past, even 4 or 5 years, has been transformational for the game, and probably far quicker than any of us would have ever dreamt and ever hoped of, is where we've got to. And I think there were some significant moments along the journey that I was fondly part of in terms of how do we want to invest in England teams. I remember the day we decided to make all our national coaches permanent full-time staff. And now you think, well, that was absolutely ludicrous that we wasn't, but that was where we came from. And we're really proud of that journey, actually, because we talk a lot. We have 3 identity anchors in our game, and that describes who we are, and that's courage, find a way, and grounded. They're 3 things that we hold dear to us, and we feel like our journey of coming into the Football Association. Years ago, there used to be a women's FA that wasn't run by the main governing body. That came in-house many years ago. And now we went for a period of time where we were growing and evolving women's football across the organisation. And now we're in a position where the game is so strong, it has the ability to stand on its own 2 feet, but also it's attractive. It's attractive to commercial sponsors. It's attractive to partners. It's attractive to the public. We have a different fan base to what the men's game has, and we should celebrate the uniqueness of women's football and protect the uniqueness of women's football. And I think when we talk about the perception of the FAs, it for me that's how it may have been previous, but it certainly isn't where we are now. And I think just the investment that's gone into us and me as a person as well, and the women's game here is. I truly believe, I say this a lot, we are the biggest federation in the world. We invest, probably from what my statistics tell me, the most amount of money and resource for women's football in the world. And that's huge. But I think the nuance to this is how the Football Association have allowed us to do what's right for women's football and not copy and paste the men's game. And that's been the change in the last 5 years.
I was going to ask you about the turning point, the change, and you've actually already answered my question. Because there seems, for me who lives here in the UK and loves my football and watches football, it seems there's been a change. You know, with the Euros 2022 when we won them, and we're filling Wembley with 80,000 women, but not that long ago you hardly saw women's football on TV even. And now, you know, we were watching the Euros, we were watching the World Cup, we were thoroughly enjoying it. You know, we were screaming when the goals went in. And we're looking back and you know, we weren't even on telly. Women weren't even on telly playing football. So yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying, that, you know, all that investment. And I love the fact that you said about, like, you know, not copy and pasting, but
Mhm.
allowing you to choose your own journey.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think that was a significant change some 4 years ago. We have our last 4 year strategy here at St George's Park for the women from 2020 to 2024 was called Piccadilly to Podium. And I'm sure that you've both stood at some point in Piccadilly Circus in London where the world is going 100 mile an hour and there's lots of different directions and routes to take, and you know where you need to get to, but you're not quite sure what the best route is to get there that's going to be most efficient. Well, that was us 4 years ago. We all of a sudden had complete autonomy and responsibility for the women's game. Wasn't quite sure how we were going to get to podium in a really short period of time. Thankfully, we got there in 2022 and probably come again earlier than what we had anticipated. But an enormous amount of work went into that and went into the preparation for the World Cup. And now, as what's going on out on the pitch and in this camp, a lot of preparations going into Euro 25. But the game's evolved and the game's moved on. There's an incredible amount of talent across Europe. There's many federations that all believe, and rightly so, they can go and win that European Championships. And we want to give ourselves the best possible chance to do that. But by being us and continuing to drive what's important for women's football here in England.
Yeah, brilliant. Annika, you had some questions about Kay's personal challenges and smashing glass ceilings. Have you got a voice, or shall I ask it?
Please do, because if I ask, I think that I will just be
Cough.
coughing. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so we were obviously interested as well, being two ladies here, me and Anuka, and calling ourselves Sisu sisters. And Sisu is the determination to succeed when everything's stacked against you. What do you feel were your biggest challenges, and did you have to smash some glass ceilings?
Yeah, I mean, one of our identity anchors is courage, and another one is find a way. And I feel like even still now, that's something that we live every day. I think we've always used the analogy of glass ceilings. We've seen where we want to get to, but we need to bash our way through there. I think we've slightly changed the narrative to that now because it doesn't seem like it's a fight anymore. It's not a fight for women's football. It's doing right by women's football. And I think one of the things I talk about, and still a challenge today, that I urge anyone that's working in the women's game to keep championing, is being clear and understand that the women's game is different to the men's game. And yes, we play on the same size pitch. And yes, it's 11 versus 11. And yes, the ambition is to score more goals than your opponent. But how players get there and just the biology of a man and a woman is uniquely different. But also the journey of a female player and the journey of a male player is different. The psychology of a male and female is different. The resource and infrastructure for a male and female player is different. So why do we treat them the same? So one of our constant barriers all the time, and that's not just within the organization, that is globally for women's football, is just recognizing and understanding what the needs of the women's game are based on female athletes and players at the top end, and not compare us and contrast us to the men's game. Because we're the same sport, different game. We're different people, we're different athletes, we've got a different backstory, we've got a different identity. So that's something that we continue to challenge all the time, and we'll for as long as I'm ever involved in the women's game, I think it's something that's personal to me. On a real personal level, I think for me, I've always struggled with imposter syndrome because I've always felt that the way to do it is the way that the men do it, and I spent most of my early career trying to emulate male coaches, people in the male game. We've got to set a structure up, like, and that's of nobody's fault, other than that's all we knew. Growing up, that's all I knew, and I thought actually to be a good leader, to be a good manager, to be a good coach, I had to behave. Sorry, my light goes off in here if I don't move. Um, I had to behave in a certain way. And I think it wasn't long ago that I realized and recognized that actually I can be my unique self, and the skills and the qualities and the experiences that I bring as a female leader for the modern world today actually are okay. So I don't need to have imposter syndrome anymore. And when you think about the journey we've been on and the successes we've had, I constantly need to keep reminding myself of what you're doing your way is okay, and you don't have to be anyone else. But that's really hard when you've lived in a man's world your whole career. So I sympathise and I understand with coaches, young female coaches, young female leaders in any industry actually. And what I try and tell myself when I look in the mirror every day is, be confident and have belief in what you're doing, because so far so good. We always want to be better, of course we do, but so that's a real personal one for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can identify with the imposter syndrome. I think if you say you've never had it, I'm going to doubt that, because I think most of us have at some point suffered from imposter syndrome, whatever job we're doing, whether it's teaching English or being the technical director of the FA women's section, But I think most of us in our normal lives have had imposter syndrome at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
So I believe I'm going to now take this to Finland, because we have a lot of listeners in Finland, and we kind of both, Anukka and I, we are Finnish. I believe you work closely with different FAs, and you also worked with the Finnish FA.
Mhm.
So obviously, what could Finland do to try and get their football? I mean, they're not bad, don't get me wrong, but what could they do if they wanted to follow in the steps of the UK?
Yeah, I mean, we pride ourselves in the women's game to help and support many other federations across the world to keep growing and evolving the game. And we truly believe that if we can be stronger together, there's still many countries that have different challenges. And I think that we're fortunate that we can help start to shape and pave the way forwards for other federations that might be suffering with some of the same challenges that we may have faced previously. And we talk about kind of leading the way. We talk about seizing the present right now and leading the future. And we don't mean that in any arrogant way at all. We mean that in a collaborative way, that we want to kind of help drive standards, but also we want to share lessons. And I think what we've seen over the past decade and how quickly the game has grown and evolved has come about with a few things. I think building the base of the pyramid and getting more numbers and girls playing the game is really important. So our push to drive equal access in schools is massive. So giving every young girl the opportunity to play in their own schooling environment, whether it's during curriculum or after school club or whatever that may be, and that introduction to girls football is massive. I think one of the things that we did that possibly can help is understanding a young female. And I have twins, as you know, they're 9 years old, a boy and a girl, and it's fascinating for me actually because they both play football, but they're extremely different. And one of the things that we found in research against the differences between girls and boys is when the weather gets really rubbish, the girls don't want to play. And I'm not talking talent here, I'm talking grassroots level, recreational young girls. So we started changing. Well, what about if we played indoor five-a-side futsal in the winter? So girls would still want to come and engage. So there's just different ways and creative ways of building what I would call the base of the pyramid. The more players that are playing, the more girls that can be engaged, the more role models that we can provide is really, really important. So that was step one for us. The next bit is almost you jump straight to the top. So we had a mission to win a tournament. And the reason we wanted to win a tournament was to impact and influence the very start of the pyramid and girls actually playing. So where do you put your resource and where do you put your energy? Sometimes in women's football, there's such a finite amount of resource, it gets stretched so thinly. My view is actually you need to target where it's going to make maximum impact. So, for example, the legacy that's been left of us winning the Euros has been insurmountable. I mean, it's unrecognizable. So, that investment that we put into the senior women and everything we did around that has left a lasting legacy to grow and evolve the game. So the slow approach in my mind is to build bottom up and hope that one day these players can get good enough to win something. But then the game always moves on, so you need to be careful of what you're actually planning for. But then the flip side of it is imagine a world in Finland where all the resource was put in the top bit and you did win a tournament and what that would do for the country and young girls that are living in Finland. So it's kind of like you one don't go without the other. And of course, once you got the top bit and once you got the bottom bit, it's how do you connect the two? And I think that's what we've taken a lot of time and care on that's been uniquely different to the men's game over the past probably decade is how do we connect participation grassroots through a talent system that then enhances performance at the top. So I guess my lessons to anyone, any association, and there are some incredible work that's going on across the world in women's football is being really clear and deliberate around the resource that you've got, where you're trying to put that, and what you expect the output to be of that resource and what the wider impact will be if it's achieved. Because we all live in a world where we could all do with more. But I guess the final thing I'd say on that is that the strength of the women's game is also about creativity. What we're not blessed with, or maybe we are blessed if you reverse the psychology, is the millions and billions of pounds that's in men's football. But what that allows for us is it keeps us pure, it keeps us connected to what's important, it keeps us grounded, it keeps us humble, and it keeps us creative. So,
Oh,
you
I'm getting emotional. That was put so lovely.
know,
I just love that, what you just said there. But,
yeah, it's who we are, and I think long may that continue. And I don't think it's who we are in England, by the way. Working with colleagues, I've got some very close colleagues that I've worked with in the Finnish FA and previous managers. I think we all tell the same story. I think we're all connected with the same values, and I think that's the strength of the women's game for sure.
mm. Talking about the pure game, that that was pure joy to listen to that. Oh my word. So, quick question. Anuka actually put this down here, but as she's still not regained her voice, I'm going to ask you, what would you have done if your career wasn't in football?
Yeah, I mean, I often look back and think about the decisions I made. And when I left school, I went to college to do A levels, and I always talk about it was the worst time of my life. I really, really disliked A levels, but I went that route because the only thing I could see that I could do in sport at that point was to be a PE teacher. And I'm really pleased I didn't end up down that route now with friends that are PE teachers and I see their everyday life. Um, but that was all that was afforded to us. Any young girl that was interested and keen in sport went in to be a PE teacher. And I left college. because I just didn't like the A levels. I didn't like how it was delivered. It wasn't who I was. So I went to work in finance. So I worked in the city and I worked at the NatWest Tower. And I very quickly, it's not until now I realized and recognized what worked and what didn't. And it just was not me. I knew that it was not authentic. There was no heart in it. It was very transactional, and it was about earning a lot of money, right? That was a motivation for people there, and that wasn't my motivation, but I didn't know that at the time. And then from there, I went to work at Bernardo's Children's Charity, again in finance. So I worked in the head office at in Barkingside, and it was again in finance. But the bit that gave me is that the finance meant something. So we were trying to raise money to do something with that money. And again, it wasn't until later that I reflect and think, I actually really enjoyed my time there with the people that I was working with, because their higher purpose connected to the job they were doing. Even though I was still pretty bored with doing finance, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do because this job didn't exist. So I left there and I went full time at Millwall. That was my first job in full time in football. And that's where I was a head coach and technical director and led on the coach development for the women's game. And I very quickly realised there that you guys will probably know, but Lewisham and Southwark are two of the toughest boroughs in England, some of the most deprived areas. And what I very quickly realised is football changes lives, and football is in the homes of many, many people. And I was able to transform people's lives in the most smallest ways of the people in Lewisham and Southwark, and still people that I'm now friends with, that I hook them in and engage them by using the badge of the club, by using some of the tools that we had to help educate them, put them on coaching courses. So I went from this really transactional world of NatWest to Bernardo's, which I thought, well, there's a purpose here and I'm connected to the purpose, through to Millwall, which connected my love of football with a higher purpose of changing lives. And that journey, although I'd love to say it was deliberate, it absolutely wasn't. It was completely by default. But it's made me who I am, because I sit here now and I want to win a tournament. Of course, I want to win tournaments. I want to win matches. That's who I am, with this badge that means so much to me. But at the same time, I want to win it to do something. I want to win it to change lives. I want to win it to give my daughter the opportunity to have role models. I want to win it to kind of impact and influence society in a positive way. So I've been able to connect who I am to my passion. And I mean, it's been an incredible journey, but I hadn't planned it.
Well,
um,
we're both going here, me and Anuka. It's so inspirational. It makes me so emotional to listen to it.
yeah.
Oh, oh my God! And last but not least, you've been recognised for what you have done in women's football, because after your name, you now have 3 letters: MBE, Member of the British Empire. How did that feel when you got the letter from King Charles telling you that you had been awarded this accolade?
Really surreal, actually. And I've never ever, I've always done what I've done because I love it and I care about it. I've never ever done it for any kind of accolade or any recognition, and I never thought that would ever come. And in my role here, I champion other people, receiving honours, and I put people forward for that. And I never, ever, genuinely never dreamt that that would happen. And it was a fair few months ago now, on a Saturday morning, we actually had someone come round to measure up for some fitted wardrobes at home. And my son took the post out the letterbox and was sat on the stairs on his iPad, like he normally does on a Saturday morning, with this heap of posts next to him. And I ran up the stairs and I said, oh, let's grab that post. And I chucked it on the side in the kitchen. And as the post moved, I saw something at the top that said, on His Majesty's service. And at first I thought, oh God, what have I done? I thought,
It's the prison authorities. No.
yeah, I thought, I've not been caught speeding. I genuinely thought, what have I done? And my partner at the time was in the kitchen with the guy from the wardrobe company who'd been there for hours. And I just opened it, and as I opened it, my heart actually sank. And I just thought, what do I do? And I run upstairs. I was almost like a little kid. I run upstairs with this letter and I read it and I thought, I need to tell her. I need to go down. And went downstairs and I just passed it to my partner in the kitchen. This guy's working away on his laptop trying to design our wardrobes. And she looked at me and just tears just, rolled down her face. And I thought, this is pretty special. This is yeah, it makes me emotional because it's special for us all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Ah, now we're all going here. But yeah, and you're not allowed to tell people really, apart from obviously you got to tell your partner, but you need to keep it quiet for some time, don't you?
Yeah.
Before the
Yeah.
honours lists go out
Yeah.
publicly. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to keep it dead quiet. The only people I told, obviously, my partner and my mum was the only other
Mm,
person that I told. We had to keep it quiet for a fair few months. And do you know, for me though, it wasn't hard because I don't really talk about myself. I don't, my partner said, "Oh, we're gonna have a party," and I'm no, I don't really need or want a party. I just want to go about it in the way that I go about it. And for me, it's really special. It's
mm,
really special for my family. I
mm.
always say I'm an East London girl that had a dream, and now I've got an MBE, I've got a master's degree, I'm the technical director of the FA, and that is a dream come true. But now is for the people around me that have helped me, and I genuinely mean that. I talk about Tom Yordan, that told me 20 years ago I'd be a technical director, long before it would ever even happen. I think about Hope Powell giving me my first chance as an England coach. I think about my partner and my children that sacrifice time with me while I'm here doing my job and flying around the world. I'm very fortunate with that. I think about my parents that gave me the best upbringing I could ever have, and kept me real and kept me grounded, and taught me that actually being respectful, working hard, and being a good person will serve you well in life. And I hope to think that that's what has happened, and I try and live that through my own children. So I think the MBE is a recognition of a lot of other people as well, and it's not just me. And I hope that I can share that with the people that matter.
Hmm. And you're going to pick it up from Buckingham Palace, aren't you?
Yeah, so I actually go and pick it up on the 6th of November. So we are deep into outfits right now. What do I wear? What do the children wear? So that's all fun as well. What fascinator am I going to wear? So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a pretty surreal day. We can't wait to go as a family. The four of us will be going to pick it up, and I think the first stop for me when we leave there is straight to my mum's and to share the joy with her. And no doubt Dad will be looking down too.
Oh, don't. You're getting me going now again. Oh, brilliant. Kay, we are absolutely so super pleased to have had you as a guest. I think
Yes, thank you.
your story is so inspiring. Um, Honestly, well, you've seen both me and Anuka wiping our tears here. um,
You're very welcome.
we've really enjoyed having you. Thank you for taking a time out there at England's home St George's Park just to talk to two strange Finnish women who wanted to interview you. So
No,
we're going to
no.
let you go, and good luck at Buckingham Palace. You're going to smash it.
Thanks so much. And thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was Kay Cossington. That was a very interesting story.
I have to say that what an inspiring story, and I've said that word now about 4 times, but that you go from a 14-year-old that has been spotted by West Ham and you end up being a coach, you end up coaching England, and you're told by somebody at some point in your life that you're going to be the technical director of the FA when that position didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And she did end up being the technical director of the FA, the world's oldest football association. Just mind-blowing. we were so pleased to have Kay Cossington MBE as our guest. We're going to link to this, her LinkedIn page, or go to the FA's page and read more about the Lionesses journey, the women's football journey, and Kay. Thank you for listening. That was all for this time. It's goodbye, over and out from me here in the UK.
And it's over and out for me also here in Jyväskylä, Finland.